All right, I'm getting the go ahead from the Secretariat to launch into it. So, hello everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. Just phenomenal Wednesday afternoon here on Wurundjeri country. Very lucky to be here in this room with all of you, mob. In case you don't know who I am, my name is Catherine Little. Obviously, the Little name belongs to Central Australian mob, in particular, Mbunda, the Mbundawa mob. I'm an Mbundarinja from Alice Springs, meaning belonging to Alice Springs, but here on Wurundjeri country in Melbourne at the moment, which is just awesome. And as someone who's off country, it's always a great pleasure to acknowledge the elders and leaders, past, present, and emerging, not only on the country that I'm sitting on, but on all the great many lands that all of you mob are representing here today. I'd like to welcome our fellow panelists. Wonderful to have you with you, but also all of you mob who've made the time in your day to come and have a chat with us today and hear about the profiles. So we've had an incredible response to today's webinar. I think we're currently sitting close to 150 people in the room, and we're expecting that number to keep moving. It's just phenomenal response. So we know that our audience is made up of Aboriginal people who are working in the child and family welfare space, from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community controlled organisations, including staff in government agencies as well, and our non-Indigenous organisations. So your enthusiastic response speaks volumes to the importance of this particular topic, and it shows that the groundswell to recognise and document the work that our community controlled organisations are putting in, and for all of us to start learning from about them, is just genuine. So we're really, really excited about today. The webinar, of course, is also an opportunity for us to come together. It might only be an hour, but we know that we need these opportunities to champion the incredible work that our family support and early year services are doing every day across Australia, particularly with those families of ours that are, the challenge is just a little bit harder. We're hoping that you've all had a chance to read the profiles. If you haven't had the chance to read the profiles, that's okay. What we hope you'll see when you see it is a demonstration of the expertise and great strengths that our organisations have in ensuring that our children grow up happy and healthy and thriving, and that these programs build on existing and long-established strengths of our families and cultures to provide nurturing care for our children. This is also a really important moment in Australia, because we know that governments are starting to listen to us, not just consult with us. We are respected partners as we sit at the table and develop important policy pieces, like, for example, the next National Child Protection Framework. And of course, we are now supported by strong tools, including the National Agreement on Closing the Gap. Many of you, of course, are going to know that a key priority reform in that agreement is to build our community-controlled organisations to deliver the services that our families need. This webinar showcases where governments can look to invest in our community-controlled success stories. While we have profiled 11 programs so far, we know that there are so many other community controlled programs which also need to have their approaches and lessons recorded, evaluated and shared. This reflects what is coming through in the Closing a Gap agreement to build the evidence base of what is actually working for our people and push forward the concept of Indigenous data sovereignty. We expect that these profiles will be just the start. Along with the organisations on our panel today, we have worked with 6 other ACOs, and these include the Albury-Wodonga Aboriginal Health Service, the Central Australian Aboriginal Congress in Alice Springs, hometown represent, Mara Mara Health Aboriginal Corporation in New South Wales, the Townsville Aboriginal and Islander Health Service in Queensland, the Aboriginal Childcare Agency here in Victoria, and the Wellington Aboriginal Corporation Health Service working in Dubbo and Blacktown in New South Wales. I'll just do a very quick housekeeping check. If you've got your mic on, please drop it. We want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all of the organisations and your teams for nearly 2 years of commitment in developing these profiles. It's a big piece of work, 2 years of work into this particular piece. All were produced collaboratively with each organisation, and we think that the final products do justice to the extensive expertise, knowledge and dedication of the teams that we worked with to produce these documents. While we aren't able to present each profile and its key findings in detail today, you can now download all 11 from SNAICC's website, and I encourage you to read each and every one of them and consider how their lessons will work for you. In developing these, we found some common elements of success, and these included, number one, that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community ownership and leadership of programs. This improves families' access to and engagement in the program and redresses the trust issues that many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families still experience with mainstream services. Number two is that we found it's imperative to have elders' voices included in programming. Their contributions bring our cultural knowledge and systems of care for children to the fore in day-to-day activities with families. Number three was that having Aboriginal lead and support workers on the team is invaluable. Several programs achieve this through bicultural pairing with clinical staff. On teams with non-Indigenous specialist staff, the Aboriginal support workers have often proved themselves to be team members best placed to support our families, to encourage families to stay committed to the program and to support their fellow team members to understand a situation from a family standpoint. Number four is that programs that offer integrated services, often through a one-shop model, are showing tremendous successes in developing our families who are having to work with multiple government agencies and navigate confusing bureaucratic systems. Number five is that helping women, men and children connect with and build pride in their Aboriginal identity, as well as connect to country, is supporting families to establish a sense of safety and feel empowered in their interactions with mainstream services. And number six is that children's playgroups are showing themselves to be excellent spaces to develop and children's familiarity with formal education systems, a way to encourage parents as their child's first teacher, and to be soft entry points to other wellbeing services. All 9 organisations know that cultural safety is essential in all aspects of the program. This is not primarily about having cultural signs or artwork and flags on the premises or even in documents, though those things do matter. But genuine cultural safety is about who is leading and advising the organisation and program decisions. It's about who is delivering the service and who knows community members before they even step into the building, and how are community members made to feel safe, how are they made to feel at ease, and how do they understand what's going on around them. This is absolutely critical in establishing families' trust, forming a safety net around a family in crisis, and supporting and retaining our incredibly invaluable Aboriginal staff. Today, you will hear about this directly from 3 of the profiled organisations. So, that being said, I am absolutely delighted to be welcoming today on our panel Tim Crozier from the Department of Social Services. Give a wave, Tim. Faye Warner and Lisa Wellington from Waminda South Coast Women's Health and Welfare Aboriginal Corporation in southern New South Wales. Carver Watson and Christy Wadigo from the Institute of Urban Indigenous Health, give a wave, and Cheryl Hicks, who manages the Abecedarian Approach Australia Playgroups program for Gumala Aboriginal Corporation in Western Australia. Please give a wave. Right, that's enough of me. I'm going to hand it over to Tim Crozier, who will speak as the Branch Manager of Children's Policy at Australia's Department of Social Service. And of course, DSS was responsible for the funding that enabled us to not only produce the profiles and work with these great organisations, but to be here to share it with you today. Tim, over to you.
Thanks, Catherine, and hopefully everyone can hear me. As Catherine said, my name is Tim Crozier. I'm the Branch Manager for Children's Policy Branch in Department of Social Services, and my branch has responsibility for the development of Safe and Supported, the new national framework for protecting Australia's children, and working with SNAICC and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Leadership Group, as well as our state and territory colleagues and our non-government colleagues on it as well. To begin with, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians on the various lands on which we meet today, and pay my respects to elders past and present. I'm meeting from Ngunnawal country here, and I'd just like to extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are attending this launch. Firstly, I'd just like to thank Catherine and SNAICC for hosting this really important event and for inviting me to speak today. I've been working closely with Catherine and colleagues at SNAICC for probably around about a year now, or just over a year, and I've seen the amazing work that SNAICC does, and I can say that my department truly values the work that you do in terms of supporting the development and the well-being of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children. I'd just like to acknowledge my fellow panel members, Faye and Lisa and Carver and Christy and Cheryl, who are representing some of the organisations whose work has been showcased in the profiles, and that's being launched today. And can I just say that congratulations to everyone involved in today's launch. The early years intervention profiles, of which there are 11, I think do a wonderful job in terms of demonstrating how Aboriginal community controlled organisations are achieving positive results for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children and their families. And they sort of show how children can be supported to be kept safe from harm, and how they can have the right to grow up within their own family and community, and how that can be upheld, and how they can be supported to access critical health and early education services. But not only that, the profiles are really easy to engage with. They look sort of fantastic. They've been beautifully designed. I think it's just a wonderful job all round. You may be wondering how this work came about, so I thought I'd just give a little bit of background to it. So the profiles, they came out of work under the 4th action plan of the previous national framework for protecting Australia's children. And under that plan, there was a strong focus on improving outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children, and also ensuring that all 5 elements of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander child placement principle are upheld. And it was evident when we were doing all the work under the previous plan that there's lots of good practice happening, but the question was, how do we capture that and share it with policymakers, share it with those who are commissioning services, and also with the community controlled and other organisations who are delivering services. So the purpose of the project was really to sort of provide the examples of recent reform and of promising practice and case studies of ACOs that have been successfully implementing the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander child placement principle. And the profiles do just that. They kind of provide those insights into work that's happening on the ground in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. And they highlight the importance of, I think, a number of things, of sort of taking a holistic approach, of embedding culture and cultural safety in policies, practices and services, as well as also of peer mentoring and networking. I think, as Catherine mentioned before, importantly around working to build trust in services, as well as also of the value of Aboriginal family support workers. So the insights and the learnings from the profiles, they'll be used to support and inform how we go about implementing the recently launched national framework, as well as also inform future policy development as well. And we know that policymakers, when they understand how programs are implemented on the ground and the challenges that they've overcome and the successes that they've achieved, that they can make better and more informed policy decisions. So the early years intervention profiles are really rich in the information that we can draw on for us in the departments, not just for the services that we fund, but also for how we can sort of draw on that for the work that we do with our state and territory colleagues as well. So we'll be hearing about some of the examples in a minute from my colleagues on the panel, but just to sort of give an example of one of the other projects in the profiles, in the Wellington Aboriginal Corporation Health Service profile, we sort of see that innovation in bringing on board an Aboriginal family partnership worker in a dedicated cultural support role for clients under the Australian Nurse Family Partnership Program. And this approach to what children and families need by way of support is why these profiles are important. It sort of shares that innovation and that best practice. Now, the new National Framework for Protecting Australia's Children is also a key mechanism for responding to Closing the Gap Target 12 that aims to reduce the overrepresentation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children in out-of-home care. And in working to achieve that target, we'll be embedding the 4 priority reforms in Closing the Gap, which really go to a fundamental change in the way that governments work with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, communities, as well as also organisations. And the early years profiles, they support that as well. They clearly show why we need to build the community controlled sector and where government should be investing, as well as help governments think about how we can transform our organisations so that they can work better for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And the success of the new national framework will really require governments and frontline services to work together to keep children safe and to help children strive for the best outcomes. And I think it's important that the strength in the leadership group, or the leadership, I should say, of the community controlled sector is recognised, and that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples are leading the decisions that then impact on their lives and also on their communities. So can I say thanks to Catherine and to SNAICC for hosting this launch and for your work with the Aboriginal community controlled organisations on these profiles. And I look forward to working more closely with you and also with the sector in future. Thanks, Catherine. I'll hand back to you.
No worries. Thank you, Tim. Okay, so to the really exciting part, not that we didn't love hearing from Tim, of course, always important, particularly when we're talking about governments fundamentally changing the way they work with Aboriginal community controlled organisations. But of course, what's really exciting today is to hear from our organisations. So our first profile comes from Wominda in New South Wales, and it's my pleasure to introduce Faye and Lisa, who are going to present on the Nabu Aboriginal Family Preservation and Restoration Program, which is just one of a massive suite of wraparound services provided through Wominda. Faye, Lisa, it's over to you. Take it away.
Thank you, Catherine, and thanks, Tim. My name's Lisa Wellington, and this is my colleague, Faye Warner. So just before we kick off, I too would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we are all gathered on today. I'd like to pay my respects to our elders past, our elders present, and also acknowledge brothers and sisters in the room. I'd also like to really particularly acknowledge the fight in which our elders have fought so hard and have paved the way for us. So yeah, just to kick off and in regards to Wominda. So Wominda is an Aboriginal women's health and welfare service. We're a Aboriginal community controlled health and wellbeing service. We have been in operation now for 38 years, and we provide culturally safe, tailored strengths-based care to women and their Aboriginal families. We are an Aboriginal women's-led organisation, and that is deliberate. We have a board of 7 strong women that represent our community, and our exec team is made up of women as well. The driving force behind Wominda and how Wominda came about, it was our elders who fought so hard and lobbied to be able to look at a service that provided culturally safe health and wellbeing services to women and their children, because in our community there was nothing of its kind. So they fought really, really hard and were fortunate enough to be able to get some funding and provide this service. And we've been, walking in the footsteps of our elders and continuing to lead in the practice. Like what I said is we provide our local women and their Aboriginal families with an opportunity to feel that sense of belonging, to build on that community and also to receive high quality health and wellbeing care. Our NABU program is one of many programs that we actually provide within the organisation. Our NABU program is a family preservation and restoration program that was developed in 2018, and that was out of the response of high rates of our children continuing to be removed from their families. So what our NABU program provides is we are a culturally safe and culturally grounded strengths-based wraparound support. Our program has a big team approach where we have many workers that potentially could be working with one family at any one given time. Our workers are made up of family support workers, our elders, our case workers, our counsellors, and our cultural mentor who does an extremely important role in working with our families. It is about building on that trust and developing that relationship with our families and focusing on culture. We are big on culture. Wominda Waminda doesn't fit in culture, you know, culture is our foundation and culture is everything we do. It is embedded in our tools and that we actually use as well. It is about supporting our families through that family-led decision making, you know, having those yarning sessions, deep listening and understanding where the families are coming from, but also providing that advocacy support, looking at, you know, where the families are at, what are the challenges and that they may be facing, and how we're going to walk alongside each other and do this work together. Our objectives within our NABU program is about, you know, keeping our families together and ensuring our families are with other family members if they can't be at home right now. Being able to strengthen and preserve those families. Also looking at system change and how we're going to do that change from the working level with DCJ and how we're going to work together. It's about changing and that practice and coming from a decolonising practice as well. It's about, you know, strengthening family skills and knowledge. You know, they've got many skills and extremely resourceful and, you know, are very resilient and resistant. And it's about us just walking beside them and working with them on their journey to where they want to go and some of those challenges that they may be faced with. Our NABU program, like what I said, it was a direct response to our community's concern at the time. Our community's concern was far too many of our children continue to be removed and placed in out-of-home care where they potentially may not be placed with family. So it is about, okay, wherever possible, bringing them back home to family, working with the whole of the family. That includes our dads as well. We talk about, you know, change in behaviours and that. So we need to be able to support the whole of the family. We work with mum, we work with dad and all the children that, or extended family members that may be in that family, and being able to just work with them where they're at on their journey as well. Like what I said is we use that decolonising lens where we do support and invite workers from DCJ and other related services to be able to work together and collaborate on how we can support our families and how we can do things differently. Because as we all know, you know, we have been in this system for a very, very long time, and it is about, you know, we need to change that. So how are we going to do that? And we need to work with those services like DCJ, like health, like education, and be able to have a better understanding of where our family is coming from. It is about, you know, providing that case plan and working with them on their goals and what they want to achieve, but looking at what are their strengths already, what have they been doing, you know, what are the family's hopes and what are their hopes for the future as well. Our program offers a service up to 18 months, so we can work with any family up to 18 months, where we can continue to provide that wraparound support. And even if DCJ have closed families, we can still continue to remain in families' lives until they, you know, achieve their goals and they want to exit and they're ready to move forward in their journeys. We do have referrals that come through not only through DCJ but also our community referrals as well. So we have families that can refer directly to us to be able to provide that support to them wherever they potentially might be at risk, or you know, they are concerned that DCJ may become involved with them. We've provided just a little bit, we wanted to just give you a little bit of our stats so far. You know, we've been supporting 108 families over the year, which is approximately around about 510 family members. In terms of the children we've supported within the NABU program, 336 children we've worked with over that funding period. We've preserved 171 children. We've restored 12 children, and unfortunately, you know, 8 children were removed. So 145 children are still involved in our program with us right now.
I think so. I know we're running out of time really
quickly, so I'll talk fast, but I think some of the really key elements of the success of NABU is what with Lisa's with Lisa's leadership and many of the other staff in NABU, it is a big team. There's about 21 staff in the NABU team. So I saw a couple of questions come through. That's really crucial. So we've actually really pushed very, very hard with the department. We had numerous meetings and lobby and advocacy, with the Department of Communities and Justice here in New South Wales, where we fought for this program. So it was, it went from month to month funding to now a 3-year funding cycle. It was a fight, and make no bones about that. It was a massive fight, and we didn't let go of it. We pushed and pushed, so much so that I don't know if they realised it or not, but it's actually in our service objectives about systemic change and decolonisation and pushback. So it's in there forever now, and I think that's a big part of our success, and what we would say needs to happen around the elements of success for this program are around collaboration, but the Aboriginal service sitting in the driving seat, not hoping for DCJ to come up with the goods, like demanding that, having a team approach and that wraparound approach. Obviously, what Lisa's saying about cultural safety, it's not a component, it is that. That collective approach to women, men, boys and girls is crucial. Strength-based, having a gender balance, and much more than a gender balance. It's really about the driving force of NABU, the driving force of Waminda is that matriarchal society, and putting that first and foremost and not giving way on that at all. And I think that's what's really crucial here. There's, we've got a program that's, highly successful, but we have to fight. We've just fought for that so hard. It's ridiculous. And I think there's some real lessons here. And obviously, if we had more time, we'd go into much more detail about that. But even some of the things that I think are crucial is that it's one of its kind in New South Wales and even across the country, the type of model being an Aboriginal-led evidence-based program, which they haven't decided whether they're going to, wrap some research around it or not. So some of those things we're still fighting for. It's just crucial that, there's an opportunity to see the value in a program like this that's got very, very tangible changes. It's got elders at the centre and cultural mentors.
Thank you. That was an awesome presentation, and I think one of my favourite quotes in amongst that incredibly powerful presentation was that culture is our foundation and it is embedded in everything that we do, and being able to talk to us about what that looks like and give practical examples of how you might implement that is a gift to all of us. So thank you very much. It's now a huge pleasure to introduce you to Carver and Christy from the Institute of Urban Indigenous Health. Carver and Christy are going to talk to us about a maternal support program that is getting attention not only here in Australia but internationally as well. Carver and Christy, take it away. Over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite, and thanks for having us. I think what we'll sort of try to do is I'll talk a little bit about our IUI and our background and our history, and I'll leave the finer details around our birthing program to Christy, who has been a real key part and foundational sort of member of getting that up and running. But first and foremost, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land that I'm on today, the Yuggera people, but also our traditional owner groups where everybody is tuning in from right across the country, and send you greetings and respect from our little patch here in southeast Queensland. IUI is essentially a regional health organisation. We're relatively new, only 10 years old, but we come from our local community controlled health services here, who have our eldest is turning 50, I believe, this year. So we've got, combined across our 4 member health services across southeast Queensland, over 100 years of community controlled health work that really, forged a new way of doing things here in southeast Queensland in light of the Close the Gap sort of refresh. Or it wasn't the refresh back then, it was just the new Close the Gap scheme. And so for a lot of our health services back then, with about 5 clinics servicing close to 4,000 people, we knew that the task of providing appropriate and deadly primary healthcare to our mob across the region really needed a bit of an injection of new thinking and new ways of doing things. And so we came together to forge the Institute for Urban Indigenous Health to take a regional approach for our people here in South SEQ. So we went from about 5 clinics to about 20 clinics now across the region, servicing about 5,000 people to over 45,000 people. And we've got, throughout that time, we've had a pretty extensive sort of evolution in terms of how we think about primary healthcare. Originally, you know, it was around clinics and GPs and GP management plans, but as we've progressed over those 10 years, we know that, you know, there's so much more that, you know, that goes into the health and well-being of our people, and that is right across the life course. And that life course approach to health really did enable us to start thinking along the lines of, you know, our young ones, and birthing is a fundamental area where, you know, the journey of our people actually begin in a lot of ways. And so, you know, with that in mind, the investment and thinking around how do we build stronger deadly families was high on the agenda, and we were fortunate enough to have a deadly partner in Mater Hospital to work with us in terms of workshopping, you know, what does a birthing service on our terms of reference actually look like. And I think, you know, that was a start of the journey. I'll let Christy talk a little bit more about what that has evolved over time to be, but I will say, fundamentally, like many of our health services or community control services, at the core of that birthing program is something that we've always held true. I think, you know, for Aboriginal people across the country, it's our right to self-determination. It's the right of our people to be able to design and shape services that we receive and how we receive them on our terms, to make sure that they sit with who we are as people. And I think it's one of the great successes of the BIOC program, Birth in Our Community program, is that it's in fact been essentially developed by the Aboriginal women who've gone through that service, and their stories and experiences being able to shape the way in which we do things, but also the Aboriginal women from our community who work in the service that actually are there to engage with the mothers, and, you know, a lot of our staff were mothers on the program as well, and who actually guide the way in the direction of birthing in our community. So it's a great testament to Christy and her team, but also all of our mothers who've come through the program as well. Christy?
Yeah, thanks, Carver. I too would like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land on which we're all gathering today, and pay my respects to our elders, past, present, and those emerging. My name is Christy Wadigo. I am currently the General Manager for Family Health and Wellbeing here at the Institute. I was recruited into the Institute over 5 years ago now to lead the Birthing in Our Community program. So it's a piece of work that's incredibly close to my heart, and definitely a program that we've created not only for MOB but for my family to access and utilise. So it's an important piece of the family-centred practice framework here at the Institute, and incredibly close to my heart, as it is for most of our families here in Southeast Queensland. So just a little bit more around the partnership and how we did establish the BIOC program. Many moons ago at the Mater Hospital, we had every Thursday antenatal clinic, which was called the Murray Clinic, and we had many families coming from around Southeast Queensland to access that care, thanks to an incredible ALO who was present and created the space for our families. That service was provided for some time, and it wasn't until the community came together and there was an evaluation completed on the Murray Clinic in around 2011, where it was decided that while we are delivering a great service, the Mater are delivering a great service, so we can do so much more. But we also knew at this point that, well, the Mater acknowledged that the Mater needed to go out to community to actually hear what the community felt and wanted to be delivered within their space. I will acknowledge at that point too that I think it takes a lot of courage for someone like the Mater to be able to acknowledge that they are delivering an exceptional service, but they know very well we could do so much more. So that is where a great partnership is actually is established, and what we've grown from. So in 2012, we had a World Cafe where we had many stakeholders around the community, not only clinicians, but community members around the sector, from SNAICC, from IUE, that had accessed the service, that were community elders, come together and yarn about big sky dreaming. What is it that we want to achieve? What is it that our community do need? What is the gap, and what can we provide for our mob? And ultimately, it's always about that beautiful birthing centre and a space where we can all be and birth our babies outside of an institution. But what we did create was an agreement and this partnership where SNAICC as well as IU and MARTA would come together with our current resources and deliver a service called Birthing in Our Community. At that point in 2013, this memorandum of understanding was agreed that we would come together as a collective and start to work towards the community requirements, listening to community, and the community telling us what it is that is needed. I'm really pleased to say that even to this day, those 3 CEOs that committed to this partnership continue to meet on a regular basis and can continue to review the program deliverables and explore new ways of working. So at that point, we pulled in our resources, which was our midwives, our psychologists, social workers, etc., and established the Birthing in Our Community program. In 2016, we were grateful enough, or we were lucky enough, I should say, to be able to open up a hub nearby at Salisbury, our Mums and Bubs hub, and that basically changed the way in which the program was delivered. And we are now seeing 260 families come through that program every year and get the care that is required. Throughout that process, we did have an Indigenous birthing study walk through the program over a 5-year period with our families, gathering research, which is proven now that the program is delivering exceptional outcomes for our families. So in regards to BIOC, what is BIOC? And it is any mother that's carrying an Indigenous baby that's birthing at the MARTA hospital comes onto our program. She is given a family support worker that is dedicated to her journey up until baby is 3 years of age. During that process, she gets a dedicated midwife who walks through her journey of antenatal care, births her baby, and then cares for mum and bub up until baby is 6 weeks old. At the hub, not only do you get that dedicated family support worker that journeys through that your birthing journey, but you also get access to social health, so a social worker that's dedicated to the program, a perinatal psychologist, again dedicated to the program, transport, early learning officers, and now child health nurses that are all sitting within one hub out in community. The important thing about the hub is that the hub is not owned by anyone. It is the community's space. The community decide how we actually access and what they do within that space as well. Every Friday we have our community day where our families do drop in and get, whether it's antenatal or postnatal care, some education around breastfeeding. Perhaps it's, a good yarn because our families are feeling isolated or whatever that may be, especially in their current environment. But we do have access to that, and it's the continuation of that healthcare journey. So it's not only about birthing a beautiful, healthy black bubba, it is about ensuring that our families continue with their healthcare journey, ensuring that they have the choice to be able to access the appropriate care that they are absolutely worthy of accessing without judgment in a culturally safe environment. So throughout this program, or throughout this journey of birthing in our community, we have taken the approach around redesigning the healthcare system, investing in our workforce, strengthening our community, and also embedding community control. Providing this holistic care with this wraparound service, it addresses our social determinants. It also meets the needs of early engagement and attendance of antenatal appointments, providing the transport, and as mentioned, education around nutrition and breastfeeding, as well as secure attachment. And all of these indicators have resulted in improved health outcomes for our families. As mentioned in the briefing as well, that the outcome of what we've done has been released in the Global Lancet, resulting in 50% of our families 50% less likely to give birth prematurely. So within the Birthing in Our Community program, it's absolutely centred around the family connection. The model is a unique example of what can be achieved through genuine partnership and when it is led by community. So to ensure that this program is a success and we can expand and upscale, it is all around embedding community control. And that's exactly what BIOC and the Institute is actually driving here within South East Queensland. Thank you.
Thank you to Christy and Carver. I like that big sky dreaming, new and deadly ways of doing and thinking. What an awesome concept to take into us. I'll just note the time at the moment. We've got a call. We've only got 15 minutes left. So we've just checked. Zoom will not drop out at 12 o'clock. So we can go a little bit over. And we are planning, if interest is there, to potentially have another one of these going forward. But that being said, it's time now to move on to Cheryl, who is joining us essentially, we've talked about the birthing program just there, but we also know that our profiles have had some wonderful stories about the emergence of Aboriginal community-controlled playgroups. And Cheryl is from Gumala, and they have a program called 3A Playgroups Program. And it's one of the 5 playgroups that we've profiled, and each and every single one of them has had really common themes, but their own unique approach. And we all know that education is critical to ensuring that our kids are strong and that they're safe and they're able to take on the world. But understanding how to apply that to your own context, well, only people on the ground can do that. So Cheryl, I might hand it to you to tell us how you applied those principles so that they were unique to your own community.
Thank you. So my name is Cheryl Hicks. I'm a Nullama woman from Roebourne in the Pilbara region of Western Australia. And I'm employed in a unique position as program coordinator for all the 3A Gumala playgroups across the Pilbara. But it's a unique partnership between Gumala Aboriginal Corporation and the Education Department of Western Australia. Before I begin, I'd like to also acknowledge all the traditional owners on the land on which everyone is meeting and joining us with today, and pay my respects to all our elders past, present and emerging. So Gumala is one of the largest Aboriginal corporations in Australia and serves the Bunjima, Yinawonga and Yayabali people of the Pilbara region in the Western Australia. And Gumala has a unique and transformational approach to poverty alleviation in a socially complex environment and is enabling social, economic and community development solutions for traditional owners. One of the ways they do this is with our 3A program. So the 3A actually stands for the Abecedarian Approach Australia, which is a research-based program coming out of the University of Melbourne. It's a very successful program, and it basically covers 4 elements. So the priority of language, and that is done through learning games, conversational reading, and enriched caregiving. So basically it's about increasing child's vocabulary through the parents engaging with their children, and it's that back and forth engagement and conversation through reading, through learning games, and also through enriched caregiving, which is all the different routines throughout the day. And all of those routines and activities provide opportunities for the parent and child to engage and to be building vocabulary. One of the beauties of our program is that it's empowering families as their child's first teacher. So the families are shown how to engage with their child in a culturally appropriate way, but also through modelling of our staff. So we employ 3-4 staff at each centre who model with their own child. All of our centres are run by Aboriginal families, and we capacity build families. And so families begin coming as parents, and then they gain that confidence and knowledge, and then they are employed as staff. And then part of their role is to model and engage families in doing the learning games and the conversational reading and showing how to do the enriched caregiving activities. So building confidence and empowering families as their child's first teacher. And the aim and the focus is to get every child ready for school. And so that when they enter school, they're on target where every other child is. So giving them the best start to their education. With the research project with 3A, the research has shown that through doing all of these activities and building language and the enriched caregiving, the conversational reading and the learning games, it actually builds healthy brain development. And the results that they've seen through this project and the research that they've done is that if you're engaging in these sorts of programs with the 3A approach from birth, that brain development and progression you see through education, achieving year 12 and going into different careers has been very successful. So our aim is to empower families and help support them to provide the best education for their children. One of the things that we also do is link in with other services, so with our health providers, and we have different services coming into our centres. It can be very difficult for families to take that step of actually going and engaging with, child health nurses or, attending immunisation clinics or going and seeing dietitians or speech. So we get all of those services to come out to our centres and build relationships with the families so that they feel more comfortable to come in and access those services at the local medical centre or hospital. Something else that we do as well is engage with the child and parent services through the Department of Communities. So where we have children that are in care, Aboriginal children, and getting them to come in and access the playgroup. So they're actually providing the children with a culturally appropriate service, letting them engage with other Aboriginal children and other Aboriginal families as well. And it's providing them with an environment outside of, being in a hostel with non-Aboriginal workers. We also engage with family support, so where they've got targeting and providing support to young families or families where they're experiencing different issues, trying to encourage and build those relationships so they can bring clients in to engage with our services as well. And also with the attendance and engagement team with the education department, looking at engaging young mums who have dropped out of school at an early age and trying to engage them in our services as well. A lot of the feedback that we get from families is that our centres, because they're all run by Aboriginal women, and we're providing a culturally safe environment for families that they feel comfortable coming in and accessing the services. They get an opportunity to engage with other mums, so they can build relationships and have that support from other families, especially if they're going through different situations and issues themselves. And our staff themselves have started as parents, and then they've received the 3A practitioner training. And we also encourage staff and try and support them to continue further training. So a lot of our staff are interested in or have started doing certificate 3s in early education and care or diplomas. And then they're also able to access, other training as well. So like, first aid certificates, mental first aid courses, growing healthy brains, 4 different programs and courses and things that they can do. So our program actually develops the parent as well as the child, which is a beautiful thing. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Pretty much. You make it sound like it's just a little thing. That was an awesome profile. Thank you very much. Developing the child as well as the family, and not only actively engaging families, but looking for career paths for parents and accelerated career paths for existing staff. What an awesome example. The other thing that's pretty awesome is all the way from the Pilbara. Once upon a time, before the world of Zoom, getting all of you mob in the room would have been a lot more difficult. So one of the gifts, I guess, of COVID, not too many gifts to ask anyone like me who's trying to get over COVID, but that is an awesome one, is the way we're able to use technology to connect and share our stories. So Cheryl, thank you. We do have time for a few questions now. We will have to go through them. As I said, we have asked for a little bit of extra time from Zoom. So if any of our panelists need to jump off, please let me know. Oh, actually, I'm being told I'm having trouble with video, so I must have turned that off and on again. Anyway, I am using COVID as my excuse, right? I am still in recovery. It is surprising how hard it is to recover from. So anyone who's telling you it's not is a big liar, pants on fire. Anyhow, question and answer time. Our first question that was delivered to us is one for Tim. Tim, you're in the hot seat. And that question is that we know that the Safe and Supported National Framework for Protecting Australia's Children 21 to 31 has recently been launched. And the question is, does this framework address early intervention and prevention programming? And how can we expect to experience this on the ground?
Thanks, Catherine. And yeah, that's right. So the framework that was released in December last year, it does really recognise the importance of early intervention and targeted supports, particularly in the context of families who may be at risk or vulnerable in terms of preventing further harm. So that's really sort of recognised within the framework. One of the framework's focus areas, it's called Focus Area 2, but that is about taking a national approach to early and targeted support for children and families experiencing vulnerability and disadvantage, and particularly around how to sort of strengthen the interface between child and family services, as well as also a range of other services. So, for example, domestic violence services, mental health services, housing, and so on. Just to sort of give a few examples of what might be some of the priority areas under that. So that includes things like developing multidisciplinary models that works for families with multiple and complex needs. And in the Commonwealth Closing the Gap implementation plan that was released last year in August, there was a measure in there that was funded by Department of Social Services, which we're calling Improving Multidisciplinary Services. But basically, that's providing 49 million in funding to work with states and territories to review and redesign frontline service delivery models. And an important component of that will be around embedding the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander child placement principle. Excuse me, sorry. There's a couple of other things also in terms of some priority areas which go to how to better integrate government services, as well as also how to improve the systems and services in terms of how they respond to the needs of Indigenous children, and also the other priority groups that are within the framework, but particularly around sort of recognising the importance of healing. One of the other areas that I think also goes to the early intervention and sort of targeted support approach is that there is a really sort of strong focus in the framework around supporting the growth of Aboriginal community controlled organisations as well. And that's something that we've been, as you know, Catherine, there's been lots of discussion about that in terms of the actions. So I guess while the framework sort of sets out the sort of the vision and the strategy, the action plans will hopefully then show how that will be translated into things that are being experienced on the ground. And we're looking to have hopefully some of the early announcements around some of the actions that are coming out of the plan in sort of late March, early April, and then we're looking to finalise the action plans around May this year.
Thank you. we have movement. It is a very exciting time to be involved in children and the development of policy and programming, and to hear the emergence of our multifaceted approaches already, and to know that hopefully coming there will be more support for the development of more of these programs and the strengthening of these programs. So our second question goes to Christy and Carver, and that is, your program, this is how it starts, your program in part is so effective because of the leadership right from the very top. What is it about leadership, about your team, that has made this program the success it is? What is different?
Hands down, it's all about our leaders leaning into somewhat of a vulnerable space, acknowledging that we don't individually have the answers, but it is about a collective, and it is about coming together for the greater good of our community, and also empowering and entrusting the archos to actually make an informed decision with the consultation of their mob around that table, with that collective leadership. I pay my absolute deepest respects to the leaders at the Marta who have walked along this journey with us and have been very open to the fact that they can only provide and do so much, but they are completely looking to us as the archo to say, what is it that your community need and how can we service you? So that is an incredible, powerful piece of the puzzle, and we could not do it without that mindset. We have tried to partner with other services, and we have been unsuccessful purely because the intention is not aligned, and the intention always needs to be embedding community control, allowing our mob to care for mob, because in the current environment, there's a reason why mob aren't accessing healthcare. So we do need to redesign the healthcare system. We do need to find a way that works for our community, and our community have the answer.
Thank you, Christy. That actually leads really nicely into the next question, and it's for Faye and Lisa. And we noticed in the conversation that you had with us, there was a lot of reference to words like decolonisation. Now, you've actually managed to get that entrenched in your funding agreement, I believe. So tell me, why is it important to have language like that to promote and support decolonisation through service system-wide and systemic change that reflects promising practice to improve outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children? This is quite revolutionary language to get into funding agreements. Why is it important to get it in there?
Mm-hmm. It's extremely important because we talk about coming from that decolonising lens, and child protection and the systems of where it's all off the back of colonisation. So it is about changing the language. It is about how we're doing things differently. When we're talking about working with our families, what is it that we need to do? Like in terms of the advocacy, the assumptions that's placed on families, racism, that's systemic racism as well. And it is about changing the language and how we're going to be able to work side by side to be able to support the family through their process.
And I think the other thing about what we've also been able to get into the agreement, and there was a bit of toing and froing, as you can imagine, but is for our CSC, so our local officers of Department of Communities and Justice, that they have to do cultural immersions, all of their staff with us. And it starts at the top. So we've insisted on having the whole management team sit with us as an organisation to do those cultural immersions and to really look at decolonising practice and to reposition their thinking with the knowledge that the Aboriginal service is the one in the lead, not them, and that the knowledge stands firmly and squarely with the Aboriginal women in this organisation. So that's obviously really difficult conversations. It's going to be many, many, many more difficult conversations, but we keep coming back to that, and we're determined that we don't err away from talking about systemic change, because that's the issue. The issue is colonisation. What we find is that government departments would like to talk about in an individualistic way, so that, oh, they've got a problem with a couple of people in a couple of the offices. No, you haven't. This is a systemic issue. This is with how the whole system has been established. So it sounds big, and it is big, but if we don't start there, we're not going to see change.
Thank you, ladies. So I guess, again, that moves really nicely to the next question that we have here, and it is talking about systemic investment. Cheryl, we know that you've got some incredible programs, and some of them are lucky enough to have their own premises, but others, you've got to go and borrow your space to be able to roll these programs from other organisations. And this obviously reflects, I guess, the investment into the sector in the first place, and that you don't have the capacity to have your own infrastructure in place. What is the importance of being able to have your own environment, your own space to deliver your programs?
It's actually really, really crucial, because you can't create that safe, welcoming, culturally appropriate environment without having your own centre, your own space. One of our centres in one of the towns was operating out of, I think, 3 different locations across the week. So one of those was a child and parent centre, which had like playgroup type facilities. So it was a good environment, but you're utilising someone else's space. So you're not actually able to put things up on display and really make that place your own. Another place they were using was the lotteries house, and it was just a big room. So staff would have to go and get things out of storage. And one of the beauties of our program that I forgot to mention is that we actually employ staff with their children. So the idea is that they're modelling with their children. So staff were having to, bring their young children with them to go get things out of storage, and then trying to bring all the equipment and their young children and try and set up the environment. So it's really difficult to turn a large space into a welcoming early childhood environment. And it was very draining over a large period of time. So we were actually very successful. Goomala supported utilising one of the houses that they had for members. And they've actually granted us a house that we rent, and we've turned that at the end of last year into our early childhood centre. And we've now, like this year, got that space established, and the staff there have created that welcoming environment. They've been able to put the children's artwork up on display, have posters. One of the things that we're trying to do in each centre is to have cultural and language, the local languages of the area up on display, creating those culturally appropriate books and things like that as well, using photographs of the children and families. So, having your own space is critical.
Thank you, Cheryl. That having your languages on display, I know I'm getting old, but I have to admit, every time I walk into a room where I see the words Aranda or Luruja on the wall, or words that are in that language or those languages, geez, I feel proud. So it's when I hear that, it sounds like such a simple thing, but wherever you go, if you can see yourself, you feel really good and you feel really strong. That being said, we are out of time. We're at 2:06 p.m. and I know a lot of you have stayed on a bit over time, so thank you very much. A huge thank you to our panelists, Cheryl, Christy, Carver. I don't think Carver's there anymore, but we're saying thank you to him. Faye, Linda, it has just been awesome to have you with us today. All of you who've signed in, thank you for joining us. If you're not already a SNAICC member, we do these webinars quite regularly where we get people in to talk to you about what's going on, what you could possibly, ideas for how you might inform your practice or how you might communicate what's going on in and around the world. And we also take suggestions for what a good webinar would be, or a good topic for a webinar would be. So if you're not already a SNAICC member, please join us. Our collective voice is always stronger together. Thank you. You can see the profiles at our website. You can download them. They're all worth a read. They're all phenomenal. And of course, this recording will be uploaded to the website as well. So if you've got someone that you really want to show this to, they can still join us. So thank you, everyone. It's been fantastic. Don't forget, if you're not a member, please join us. See you all.
Thank you.
Heaps of people are.
Thanks so much.